Order, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so wanted to open up the meeting. This is our first of 3 scheduled work sessions on the 2018-2019 budget. A lot of work ahead of us. I'm looking forward to lively discussion. I think we've got an opportunity to really take a close look at this budget and figure out where we need to be to support the environment and where we need to be very prudent. So, with that in mind, I think traditionally in the past, we have taken the meeting agenda being take the sections of the budget one at a time, go through them in excruciating detail, make sure we are all aware of the nuances, the details, and so on and so forth, and then agree that we're either A, comfortable with what's been presented, or B, additional work is needed. All right, and then we can socialize exactly how we want to do that in preparation for the budget session for the membership on the 10th, and then ultimately deciding on accepting the budget at the board level in the meeting on the 25th. And for those watching the 25th, I apologize based on everybody's schedule. We're having a meeting on the 25th, which is a Sunday. All right, now I know that wasn't everybody's first choice, but I thought it was important. I think the whole board thought it was important that everybody be here in person, so that any questions that came up were readily answered. If a member had a specific question towards a specific director, that director would be available for discussion. So, is everybody comfortable with that approach as far as our meeting for today?
Yeah, I'd like to make one comment in regard to the approach. We all came prepared to provide our individual inputs. I have some basically ideas around mandating certain measures that I believe should be considered in order to reduce budget as well as expenditures. That's not department specific, but it resonates across the organization. So just like to see if all of you have come up with similar ideas, because that might dictate how we take section at a time, or we can do it at the end when we're done with all the sections. Either way, it's fine with me, but I just wanted to share with you that I do have some very specific measures that I would like to put out for consideration and vote in terms of budget cuts and cost cuts.
You know what, that's a good idea. As thinking through, as you're saying that, slow down, I wonder if by going through the detailed individual sections first would contribute to, because we might decide something in those discussions that would contribute to the overall, or maybe change our approach to overall versus doing the overall first, and then trying to go through each one of the sections. I mean, I like the approach, but I would just offer maybe we do what you said and do it at the end.
Okay.
With the idea that'll finish
Yep.
our requirement to say what have we done in the individual budgets that will affect the overarching sort of policy that we want to move forward with the budget. Everybody okay with that?
That sounds good.
Just to give you all an idea of what I have in mind, so you can think about it, whether we do it this morning or another day. For instance, benefits and entitlements, okay, healthcare plans, that obviously goes across the entire organization. Salary increases, again, that's an issue that goes across the entire organization. Open positions, unfilled positions, new planned positions, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these are the measures, the mandates that I see as an organizational wide as opposed to department specific.
Yeah.
So that's what I have in mind.
I would agree.
I have the same thing. I have personnel.
Yeah,
I
think we've discussed that
Great.
via emails.
Yeah, and that might be a good way to
Enough to
finish
know
up the
that
discussion.
We're all interested in
Okay,
that
all right, good, all right.
area.
Anybody else before we get started on individual sections of the budget? Okay, all right. First section is the admin, all right. So, and the way this meeting has been conducted in the past, it's an open discussion. We're not following Robert's Rules of Order, so Steve, JB, certainly feel free to join the discussion as necessary. You don't have to be formally recognized. We're not passing motions. It's a work session. So it's open dialogue, it's a sharing of ideas, and quite frankly, it'll be very good and candid discussion, so. All right, so seeing that everybody's a little bit gun shy, I'm gonna start, all right? And it kind of, and I kept this at the admin level, because I thought it was a problem. I think it was last year, we had floated the idea of paying your assessment via credit card, all right? Now, at the time, I think we talked about, we weren't really sure whether that was a benefit or, how we would handle that. I just want to throw that out to the group. Do we want to consider that again, or is it just something that's, not worth pursuing any further?
I actually thought we did it.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, I thought it was offered. I think the debate was around service fee
Yeah.
that was imposed
That's-
on
you're right.
credit
That's what
charges.
it was.
And there is a state law that dictates actually what kind of service fees we can charge. There is a maximum that's dictated by law. So I don't know how we did it and how many homeowners actually took advantage of that payment option, whether it should be continued or not.
I think that would be critical to know. Did anybody even do it if we offered it? I think it's a great thing to offer. It may.
I think
Yeah.
as long as we get whatever our fee is that's
Mhm.
coming off to Visa or MasterCard back, so that
Right.
it's even. I
Right.
mean, for people who are in these credit cards nowadays that give you
Right.
percents back and everything else like that, it
People
just
will
seems
be
to me
anxious, yeah.
it would be a good.
When I
deal.
paid mine last year, that was offered,
That's what I thought.
and the fee was $35, so I declined.
Okay, was it, okay.
Yeah.
It was a flat dollar, is that?
It was a flat dollar,
Yeah.
yeah. You can do flat dollar or percentage. I think the other issue that we need to be cognizant of, according to our declarations of restrictions, we have to charge each homeowner equal amount. And I think that was the reason why service fee had to be separate from the assessment fee in order to comply with the DRs. I don't know how that's being done from a bookkeeping perspective, and how it's being tracked.
Well, yeah, I'll tell myself, I did not know that that was an option. My recollection was that we had talked about it and we weren't really ready to push it through, so the fact that it was offered is puzzling, but hey, let's,
Well, it was
you know.
offered because I forgot my checkbook.
So you were a special circumstance, is that
And
it?
then
Well-
failed to pay.
Yeah, I thought for sure it was.
Well, that's in the 4% range. If it was
That's pretty
$35
high.
on 900.
Yeah, that's high.
Well, I
The
have the
900, that's in
extra
the
assessment because
almost
I'm,
4% range.
So I guess I'll throw the
Which is
first question
reasonable.
out, is do we want to consider that as part of our operating environment? Steve?
So apparently per art, we have always offered it.
Oh, we have.
We charge a convenience
Oh.
fee, so it's called a convenience fee to basically
Mhm.
recoup the processing charges, which end up being about 2%.
Okay.
Right.
It's in there, you can't establish an exact percent, you have to do ranges.
Mhm.
Because we've looked at Visa and MasterCard, and they have different requirements, and so we had to come up with some sort of a scale thing.
Given what Slobodan said, we ought to pick the highest percent that we pay, and that's
Right.
it. That way, we're covered the whole way, and we've charged everybody the exact same amount for a convenience fee,
Yeah.
whether it's $35 or 28 or 52 or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm all for
Overdone.
offering it as an option as long as we record it properly
Right.
and we're in compliance with our DRs and with accounting.
I mean, even if we get a couple people to pay, that we'd be chasing for 2 years otherwise,
Right.
that's huge. I mean, even a small number. of
Any
people.
idea how many people have taken advantage of that?
No, not offhand.
Okay.
So,
Doesn't matter, why not?
yeah,
Yeah.
my recommendation to the group, and I'd ask for consensus, is that I'd like two things. Number one, a recommendation from Steve and our JB on a convenience fee, that is in alignment with our DRs. And then obviously, if we're comfortable with that, we need to socialize it and promote it in some way so the membership knows that that's an option for them. So if we decide to move forward with that, after we get that information, I'd ask JB to make sure that that's publicized in some manner to the membership so they know that option's available.
When your invoice would be, I guess people read their invoice.
I,
Your
um,
invoice would be a good place to put it.
Yeah,
But that's-
yeah, if the accounting system can add a note on the invoice, that's there. So JB, Steve, if you guys could get back to us as soon as reasonably possible, hopefully in the next day or two, maybe we can put it to bed before our work sessions are over.
Okay.
I think it'd be a nice way to get things going. Everybody okay with that one?
When we present the final budget to the membership, that would be something
Mhm.
that we'd be publicizing.
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So-
well, yeah, the idea was, let's get it worked out as soon as possible, I don't wanna, I don't wanna delay when we have something I think is pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Okay. So other questions on the admin budget?
Yeah, I got
Ted,
a
go ahead.
couple real quick.
Okay.
Are you on the revenue section or are you on the?
I'm on the revenue
Okay.
right now, but I got stuff
Yeah,
on cost too,
good,
so.
yeah.
Revenue, casino fees, we're bumping that up 25 grand. Now, my understanding is that we only get the casino kit on, slot machines, is that correct? Or is it also on table games? I think we should figure that out, and if it is only on slot machines, we ought to be talking to our local, officials and seeing if we can't push them to talk to the people that are running for Congress and everything else right now. And I think Ocean City would probably join in with us as well, because they'd be looking for a piece of that. And see if we can't, I mean, the number's going up a little, hopefully. I mean, the place has been busy as can be off-season now that they've added the table games, but it sure would be nice to share in that revenue as well as the
Yeah, the
slots.
question I had for that was basically whether our existing arrangement in terms of what we get from the casino operations is blank, or whether, it involves new games that they're introducing, like table games. If it's a blank agreement, then obviously that shared percentage of revenue is gonna come to us. But if it's just slot machines, then we should definitely relook. And,
So I think we ought to just look at the agreement.
Yep.
Find out, and then that'll
So-
tell us, like you say, if it's blank,
Mhm.
we're good. If
Yeah.
it's not,
so we should hopefully have a copy of that agreement.
Well, I mean, if you look at the actuals from 15 through 17, it was 230, 250, 301 back in 2017 actuals. So the 325 draft budget number, I would think is achievable, but I
yeah.
wouldn't hang my hat on it yet, so,
But the table games are new. This was just passed, the legislation just
Yeah.
passed a few months ago.
yeah, the question is, do we get a
Yeah.
piece of that?
Right.
You know?
and if we
Uh,
do, great.
Who has that agreement? Do we have
Don't-
that
don't
on
know for
file in
sure.
Ocean Pine somewhere? Art?
I'm not sure whether it is unless we have
I'll look for it, but I don't.
something from them. 325 is based on what we have currently been getting, over the past year or so. I just upped that, and I have no idea about the table games at all.
If we don't have it, certainly Ocean City probably has it, Berlin has it, who all share in
It's
the
the
same
impact
pool.
fee percentages.
Impact fee
And
percentages.
whether or not it's calculated on
Gross.
everything,
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I've never seen anything.
There seems to be a little confusion about that, so if we clear it up, at least we know where we're at.
All right, so the action item is, Michelle, you're gonna look at that and then advise us whether or not we've got it, and then we'll need to reach out to whomever, just kinda make sure we get that documentation. Tom,
What?
I was gonna say, you look like you were getting ready to say something.
I
Okay.
thought the Budget and Finance made mention that even though they added live table, that they increased the slots as well. Additionally, and maybe that's where the extra revenue's looking to come from.
That's a guess.
While we're on the revenue section, I'd like to suggest we bump the interest income based on our last discussion. I think this is definitely lowball, given the interest environment for this year and the cash we have at hand. And over the year, we should be at least 100K, if not 125.
I thought the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's about a little less than 1%. So that's what we've averaged, I guess, is what we put in
But
there.
I think with moving, and
Right.
the 12-month has all been 1.5 or 1.7, I think.
Yeah, even a half
Yeah,
a year,
yeah.
T-bills are now at 1.6.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's conservative.
I wouldn't go over 100 though, just, we don't
Yeah.
know what's
Yeah.
coming
Yeah,
down the
let's go
road.
with
Well,
100,
we're
because that's it.
from-
That's right.
easy.
I don't-
I think that's
don't
fine.
see-
Remember where we started back in November, December, we were being a little more cautious because we
Right.
hadn't
We
done
need to
these
be.
things yet,
Right,
so.
right.
But I would be good with
Yeah,
100.
I would too.
You know,
I would
that's a
too.
reasonable
Yeah.
middle of
Yeah.
the road number, so.
Yeah.
I think the key out of this is just let's put our cash to harder work, to work harder. Was my slang, my accent, I guess, talking.
Other questions on the revenue or the expense side?
The accounting fees, I think after our conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we are today. I don't think they need necessarily to be there. Especially, I mean, when I'm looking at, audit engagement out of pocket, that would be presuming we use another firm from across the bridge. So I don't know, I mean, it's something to think about.
Right.
Or we might not need 43, you know, maybe 35, or, I don't think there's any plan for any additional. You've got a couple dollars in here for some internal control review, which is probably not bad,
Okay.
but.
Pat, does that 43 cover our audit, you know, for the year?
The audit and a couple bucks for internal control, but, you know, that's with this current firm that is a much bigger, you know, a little more prestigious, you know, across the bridge firm. And if we don't go that route, I mean, we could leave this in here.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
but
what harm is leaving it in,
I
and
was
if we
just-
don't spend it,
Trying to trim the expense side.
well, I mean,
and have-
if you
I
look,
mean, the
what would
budget
it,
for
would be a
me-
better
The
number?
budget for me is a guide, and if that's
Yeah.
what we're thinking we're gonna spend,
Well, here's the way I
Leave it
feel
in.
about this, you know, they bid at
Yeah.
basically 34K for audit services. If we stay with the same firm, and I think that was decided based on, you know, valid arguments about not switching now, and
well, that,
there's
we're
no
talking,
time.
this is next year, this isn't.
I know, but I would say if we just don't go over what was previously the highest bid, which is 35K, that gives you a little cushion, because we know the low bids were 22K. So I think 35 is more than enough.
I think that's a reasonable
I
number.
do too.
Yeah.
So
I think 35 is
You wanna
good to
go up
put in.
at 35?
I do.
And on the legal fees, we decided we were gonna look for local firms as well for kind of a regular legal services. I think what was unusually high last year, obviously we had a lot of issues with delinquent accounts, collections, and other circumstances that dictated legal counsel. I don't know if this is now 75K, if that should be revisited, if it's high or not.
I'd be nervous to pull that, I mean, just me personally, I'd be
Okay.
nervous to pull that back. We have 72 in 2017.
That's kind of what I looked at
50,
too, so
you know,
I think
and
that's
the
70.
world's only getting more.
Litigious as we
Yeah,
move
it
forward.
really is, so I'd be nervous to.
I think the 75 is a good move back to
Back, it's a
quote
huge
normal.
move back from where we are, so just, you know,
Can you
Yeah,
tell us
I was
anything
gonna
about
say-
contract services, what that is?
it's on the detail.
2.3, page 2.3.
Okay. Is it under contract and supplies?
No, it
Right,
says
contract.
contract
Contract
services
services,
on
yeah.
page 2.3,
Okay,
118.
yes, I see.
the
It's
computer
mostly
services.
computer.
and
Okay.
And
Contract services, 17K. It says 17K, and here it says 118K.
it says 118 on my sheet.
It says 118 on mine
118 on my
too.
sheet.
Contract services.
Yeah.
Oh,
2.3.
thank you. No, I'm missing 2.3, that's the problem.
It's in the
We
book.
did that on purpose.
Oh. Okay.
Everybody has a slightly different book, which
Gotcha.
it makes it much
Well,
more. It makes the day go much
you
quicker.
got your updated sheets, but that didn't necessarily change some of the
Right,
backup.
right.
Gotcha.
Backup.
Right.
So computer
Put 'em
services,
all
is this
in.
the consulting, or is this cloud services?
That's consulting.
Consulting.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I, on the same lines as
Yeah.
I see, computer services for 75K, I don't see a plan. I don't see anything, to me, it's a very nebulous number. What does that mean? Is that X number of consultants times X number of hours equals X, or is it,
Is that
I've got a
BDK?
plan?
Is that BDK
You know, I
and
mean,
what
what,
we-
it's
you
it's a
know,
little
for now?
generic here for a 75K spend. Being in the technology field, I
Yeah,
feel
it's
like I-
Lens, it's Lens Company. The consulting services.
yeah. And what are we getting for that 75K?
So I think the assumption there was that they continue forward with the ERP process solution.
Well, I would just offer, and I've said this to JB, you've got a budget-friendly group that's done a lot of background work, that's done a lot of preparatory work for all this,
Yeah.
that I would think you could relieve that burden of that cost quite readily. And you actually have people that are anxious to get back re-engaged.
I would
This
totally
one's a little
support
sensitive to
that,
me, by the way,
especially
couldn't tell.
with Steve here, with
Right.
Steve here now, to me, I mean, yeah, the lion's share is gonna be the financial end of this software.
I would see, yeah, I mean, I see,
And
Steve,
I
not
don't-
putting you on the spot, I see you being very integral
Yeah.
in that selection process. And as I said to JP in the executive council meeting, we've got, you know, advisory committees and in this case, a technology work group that's more than ready, you know, to help assist. It's a resource for you. I mean, I encourage you to use it. And matter of fact, I think a meeting is scheduled here, but, oh, I'm sorry. I sent a message to everybody.
Yeah.
Because of my workload and everything, I decided it'd be better to step away and hand that off to Tom Terry. And Tom has gladly taken on that, and as a matter of fact, Cheryl and I had a meeting with Tom.
Graciously, as opposed to gladly.
Graciously, okay, that's a better word. He graciously accepted the lead role in that to kind of, you know, assist me in, you know, with the time and so on and so forth devoted to that. We had a meeting on Friday to kind of do the transition. So Tom is officially leading that group now. I'm still a part of it. I just don't have the time to devote to the ongoing activities. So I really thank Tom publicly for stepping in and helping us out. But with that in mind, you know, I mean, I still look at this 75K and I don't see something that's material or tangible that says, here's what we're gonna do. I mean, you know, is it just staff augmentation? Well, why don't we have that? I mean, what do we need a staff augmentation for? What is it that we're doing in the technology side that requires that spend?
Well, we're spending, this is what we're spending now on Len's company.
Yeah, my
That's
question
what-
is, why?
Yeah, I don't see.
Why?
I
What
mean,
product,
I
what
don't-
project,
Yeah,
you know, what
I don't see
criteria?
it.
I don't see any.
Let me just say something. So let's, for a second, hop out of 2017, 18, and let's hop back to 16 and 15.
That's what I'm
actuals.
looking at.
Okay, so when we talk about making a cut, I'm going back to what we would kind of call normalized years. What made up, you know, $85,000 or $90,000? Do we cut 20 out of this and say, hey, we're at 100, knowing that this whole transition is going to occur?
My understanding is, and I'm speaking just because you're new, Steve. My understanding is that we paid BDK the way you would pay maybe a software licensing fee or something. We had to use them for everything. If we get new software, we will not use BDK. I mean, basically, they built our platform or whatever,
Right.
and we had to bring them in whenever anything had to change, right, Art? Anything. And so that drove those big dollars back in 2015 and 2016. Now, if we get new and this is this is a hard to nail down area because of our transition. If we get new software, that would, I would imagine, go away because we wouldn't even have BDK software anymore, systems around
Correct.
anymore. We would have a new, whatever it is, whatever
Right.
we buy. Now, is that gonna have a licensing fee? I
Yeah,
don't
and you
know,
have
an
maintenance.
annual-
You'll
Yeah,
you'll
there'll be other
negotiate a
costs
maintenance
that
contract for that
was
as
different.
well. Yeah.
So that's where I'm getting at.
Yeah.
If we had the software in place on May 1 and we kind of knew, okay, this is what the cost is going to be, fine, but how long are we going to be kind of in this
Transition.
gray period that we need to have something in for that, and we don't even know what we need for licensing fees or anything else? So I think it's a thing to look at, but we're cutting what we don't know, and we don't even know what we're putting in and when we're putting in and how much it's gonna impact, and do we have to send people to training? I mean,
Right.
is that number way out of whack for what we're talking about doing in a big picture?
Here's the way I'm looking at this situation, you know, and I think we all have a valid concern and points. We have an IT manager on staff, you know, I would like to basically suggest we come up with an IT support plan. And maybe he would be a good one to do that, because, you know, that's gonna address the software issue, the maintenance, upgrades, updates, anything. It's not just the ERP back office applications we're talking about, but we're also talking about network support, hardware support, et cetera. And unless we have an IT plan that gives us that operational breakdown, and then we can cost it, we don't know if this is a low number or high number. So I would say, let's just put this aside for a moment, if everybody's comfortable, leave it alone. We got till February 24th before we need to bless the final budget. If we can have some rough idea, an IT, you know, outline plan, support plan, it will give us a higher level of comfort that the number is okay.
Yeah, and I mean, that goes back to what I said earlier. I don't see a plan here. I see
Yeah.
a spend, and I
Yeah.
don't see, you know, any specifics regarding that spend. All right, so I think we need to hone in on that. and, you know, understand both in the short term and the long term. You know, and by the way, depending on if and when the new software, you know, and accounting system and association management system gets put in place, it'll affect your staffing going forward too. All right, you're gonna have to look at what kind of staffing, what kind of skill set do I need on site, or do I buy that from the vendor? So analysis has to be done there with regard to figuring out exactly how I wanna be able to support this. You know, is it staff plus overhead, or is it a, you know, a contract with a third party to do some, again, more discussion on that. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out because I didn't. All right, other.
While we're on our contract and supplies, if I may, I observed a sizable amount going into postage. I know some of that is related to activity guides being mailed and other things. And I just Googled, you know, how to save on postage, and I got a bunch of ideas. I was just wondering if this is, you know, we are at a point where we really need to look at every stone.
Postage is $300.
Yeah, but this is just for this department, but you'll see other departments, you know, $20,000-$30,000 in postage. I just want to highlight this as a area that goes
Across the
across several departments, and actually in the case of some other departments, it's extremely high. And if we can take a look at whether we are taking advantage of cost-saving measures, bulk mailing, et cetera, and there's a bunch of ideas on the web for small businesses, how to save on postage. I just wanted to suggest that this be noted as horizontal expenditure across certain departments that can be looked at.
All right, Slobodan, I'm gonna task you with keeping that one on the agenda
I
for our, you know, for our overall discussion,
Okay,
postage.
postage.
Thank you.
Can I hop down to other costs?
Yeah.
Bad debt. We've got 120 plugged in there. It looks like we're forecasting 200 this year. We run 230 to 270 the previous 3 years. I think we're doing a better job collecting. I mean, that's just off the top of my head. If we're really only looking at, you know, if we're only at 109 so far this year, do we feel comfortable with that number? Is that number too low, or?
Yeah, I think the updated number for bad debt puts us closer to about 120, I think, through January. I guess, Art, in terms of how that was actually formulated, we just feel that the collection opportunities.
Yeah, we keep a balance in the bad debt reserve of 225. We're budgeting 120, that gives us, you know, 3 something, so, we feel that's, you know, not gonna wipe out the bad debt reserve just on normal collections the way we've been going. We have increased collection efforts with the firm across the bridge. They are doing some extra things, that the previous legal was not doing, so, we think that's coming down now. It just depends. We've got several people that are, you know, in the $15,000 to $20,000 assessment range, and when we go to collect those, a good bit of that is going to be written off. So I think the auditors are somewhat reluctant to decrease the reserve or anything.
Well, that's, my question is, the reserve is there for the emergency thing, and we should be budgeting on what we really think is gonna happen this year. So is 120 enough? And, you know, looking up what we've run, and if we're at plus or minus 120 now, that was what we projected this year, with the new law firm in place 100% this whole year, and we're already there 4 or 5 months early versus what we budgeted for. Does that number need to go up? Even if, I mean, I'm not saying it needs to go to 230, 240, but should it be closer to 200? You know, maybe split the difference between the previous 3 years and the 120. I'm just throwing that out there.
I think it has to go up. I mean, that's
Okay.
We'd be
just
crazy not to.
given where we are, you know.
And look at that
And-
historical,
Yeah.
3 years historical data
Yeah.
tells you.
Yeah, Lurch Early sent us, and I apologize for not having that in front of me, they sent us, what they've collected to
yes,
date.
yeah,
You know, I think
yeah.
we shared that with everybody.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
so they've done a
they-
pretty good job in,
Yeah, they've done a great job,
I think they're upwards of
and I
200K they collected.
Our collection rate is
yeah.
good, and it was good with 248, 274, and 237 in bad debt, so
As a
I don't
percentage.
I don't think we can pull back as much as I'd like to 120. Maybe, maybe we can find things like the accounting fees and postage and whatever we can find. I think it's gotta go in bad debt. I think we're just gonna be, I think it's gonna go there anyway during the year.
So Pat, is there a recommendation then on what that number should be instead of
I think it should
120?
be close to 2. I mean, just
Everybody-
given our,
Yeah, I'm
That's
okay
what
with two.
I would be good with too.
and that was
Because-
based on a lower, lower assessment those prior years. So
Well, I think it's-
percentage-wise, I think,
Art said some of the stuff that's
Yeah.
floating around out here is huge, that is gonna end up getting written off in the $10, $12, $15,000 whack.
Listen, at the end of the audit, there's always.
they're gonna,
Yeah,
they
there's gonna
always
be a
come back
big-
and they always say to us, at least a couple years I've been involved, you gotta put another 50 in there, you gotta put another 70 in there,
So let's be real.
yeah, I think it's.
200 is
yeah.
reasonable.
This begs another question that I have on my list while we are talking about bad debt. If you look at our delinquent account balances, it's close to $1 million. And it's been relatively high for the past few years. So the question is, I know that our legal firm has been successful in certain collections, but if there is ever a time for us to be more aggressive with, $1 million in delinquent balances, this would be the year that we desperately need to generate revenue. So I would like to suggest, as we come up with creative ideas, how to get this balance down, whether it's amnesty program, whether it's fixed collection, based on percentage sharing. Instead of having maybe a law firm, you have a professional collection agency, and you say, okay, for every dollar you collect, we'll go 40, 60 or whatever. But whatever the industry standard is, but I wonder if we should really come up with a program to tackle delinquent accounts with a more focus this year. I looked at the report from months ago that Brett shared with the board, and I've observed some accounts that actually the interest, accumulated interest, is almost as high as the principal. So, these accounts are really in a bad situation. So the question is, are you ever going to collect? And do you carry this on a book? So do you try to do something about it? So,
Well, I think if we I think if we're carrying it, and Art maybe can, if we're carrying it, it's collectible, we write off what goes to, becomes a situation that a foreclosure, a bankruptcy, whatever the certain circumstances that you legally have no recourse, then we write it off. If it's on the books, we are thinking that we can collect it. I think that's what we do, so.
I guess what I'm saying is if we can come up with a more attractive, enticing proposition to those accounts that are delinquent, to really give them an incentive to want to,
To write off some of
Yeah,
their
to wanna
balance.
Perhaps
settle.
maybe we eat the interest.
Do you
You pay the
not,
principal.
do you not think that Leach Early is pursuing it in that way?
They-
Because I got the
they
impression
are,
that
they
that's what
are.
they're
I'm
doing.
not saying
which
that-
is, we were
They are.
proposed
Yeah.
one last year that we said, yeah, okay, we'll go along with, we'll accept X, if they're agreeing to pay it, blah, 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 whatever. So I think they're already taking that approach. Unfortunately, there is this can't get blood from a turnip concept that,
Yeah.
there is, there are situations out there, unfortunately, that, the homeowner's long gone, and so.
I agree with you, Cheryl. The issue with that, and I had that issue last year when I spoke about that, first of all, I see collection service as a service that wasn't part of their contract. Okay, so it really should have been something that should have been competed
If I could,
as an additional service.
yeah, if I could interject something, we tried a local collection agency, Eastern Shore based, and I tried a national collection agency out of Florida, very little return, if anything at all. So Lurch Early is definitely way far above any collection agency experience that I've had so far. Now, if there's somebody else that's a great collection agency, we collect 98% of our assessment.
Yeah.
It's that 2% of that adds up over time and becomes $1 million. Don't forget, we're collecting $8 million.
Now, what I was suggesting is maybe we should have a fixed percentage sharing as opposed to on a legal fee basis, you know, come up with a more advantageous, cost beneficial arrangement, because it is a collection focused effort.
I think we do our receivable review historically here in March, so maybe that, the whole process can be incorporated into that. Good time for Steve to get up.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea when you do the receivable thing,
Yeah,
let's look at that.
in March, we'll
figure
just
And
out-
try
at
to
the-
come up with a fixed,
We'll look at the whole
Well,
process.
Collection
I think
cost.
also figure out, I think what you gotta do is you gotta take a look at the last 3 years.
Right.
When we were using them, when we were kinda using them
Right.
and local, and when we were just using local. And let's see the success and because there's so many variables in these, you know, you've got elderly parents who have died,
Right.
you've got, there's 100 different things that create these things. So, like Art said, we're down to 2%. Let's see if there are ways that we can do it. The other thing is, you know, I'm not opposed to trying to find a way to do it better and the other thing is to figure out, does that incentivize any more the attorney to do it or not? You know, since we're eating it anyway, you know, it's part of the, whatever they get. So are they kind of already a little bit on an incentive basis there? So, but I do think it's something we should look at in March as a separate issue
Okay.
I
going
mean,
forward.
and the fact that Jeremy continually points out how much they've collected so far,
Right.
I think is kind of supports his approach, that I think they feel that that's one of the things that they should be doing, is really pushing, whether or not we need to incentivize them, or they're just sort of
Yeah.
self-incentived.
Right, exactly, and they're collecting what we did not collect historically in the past out of the region.
I think we should just sort of, I think
But-
what I
but
heard.
yeah,
again-
let's do it in March,
again,
but I think it would
Yeah.
be great if we can just come up with approach, a collections strategy that's really going to bring the balance down from 1 million.
Incentivize.
And also, maybe those homeowners, I'm sure they would love to be in compliance. So if we can come up with some kind of incentives, that's a one-time incentives, that gives collection effort more tool to satisfy those accounts and homeowners to be, you know, compliant. So it would be worth looking into it. We need the revenue this year.
Well, the other
more than
side is
ever before.
if we give a break, we've recorded those fees as revenue, so we're gonna have to write those off. So it's a big picture to think about, that,
Okay.
you know.
Cheryl,
Thank you.
Are we good at 15K for 50th?
No. We will be returning your entire 20K to you, so we're not gonna ask for anything else. We're getting sponsorships like crazy,
So
and
that
we
can
should
get
be
zeroed out?
Yep, we should be self-supporting.
Now, there's some I say that because is internal cost involved with staff and everything else like that. Does the 15 cover that then, in the sense of all of that's not picked up by sponsors? So for instance,
The labor costs are,
okay.
you know, so when the Public Works Department's doing signage or setting up an event or anything like that, that's just part of their operational cost.
But do you need extra dollars for that, or do you think you have enough?
No, I think it's
You don't
covered.
need to add.
It's part of the general
Part
operating
of the
environment.
general operating
So we
environment.
can zero that out and you're good with that?
Yep.
Absolutely, I know we've
Cheryl's
already,
writing a check, we
we've
take
already-
credit cards.
we already got 35K, I think,
There's 15 more for our bad debt line.
and,
There we go.
we're,
Okay.
we're expecting to make money off of the golf tournament if the second floor is ready for us. Oh, okay. And the other things are going to be probably break evens or make money, but we're gonna be in good shape.
All right, so we can strike that from the expense line.
Carl, you wanna eliminate the whole thing at this time?
My position is you'll get your 20K back.
Okay.
What 20 are we talking about, the
That-
15?
that-
That
This
was-
year,
that
that,
We've got 15 in for this next year coming up, that's what I'm asking about. The 20 is
The
last
20 is
year.
the
20
current
is-
year.
Current
Right.
year.
And that's what was allotted for us to get going, and we're intending that will be returned.
Okay, so that takes care of this year, we're gonna get 20 back, but what happens next year where we have 15 in, starting in May?
I don't know why you have it in there, is my question.
All the
That's
right.
events would have probably taken place by then, or at least been planned and funded, right?
But she's,
Is that-
Ray, I think you're indicating that you've got so many sponsors that you
We don't,
don't need this.
Right.
Let's
you're holding
just
some
take
money in
it.
escrow from the
Just
sponsors,
take
right?
it.
I mean,
Well, that helps offset some bad debt there, so, you know, okay.
All
I just don't want you to say, hey, we're giving you 20 back, and then in July, oh my goodness, we need 15 to finish something that we don't have. You're gonna, say the 20 is gone, you don't need the 15 at any point going forward.
That's my feeling at this point. You can confirm that with Denise,
Okay.
cause she and I have been getting all the sponsorships together and attending the meetings, so
Right.
I feel comfortable saying that. You may wanna run that by Denise though as well.
What I'd like to do is talk about that. I'm willing to go to 5 now, but I don't wanna hedge everything that, you know, we're not gonna need anything in there. Stuff
That's
happens.
what I'm a little bit worried about, is that there might be some stuff that is not covered.
how much of the 20K have we spent in this fiscal year? Do we know? Do we have an accounting of that?
You'd have to ask Denise about that. She's-
$663
That was
in through November.
Well, that was through
Through
November.
I'm sure something might have been spent. We're only projecting to spend 5,000 of it before May 1st, and then we figured the rest would fall into next year.
Yeah, I mean, we're like
But-
ordering T-shirts and other swag stuff.
Yeah.
And
Just come back to us.
promotional.
Yeah, we'll come back, but we'll definitely take it down to 5 now, and if we can go further, we will.
Should it be in marketing? Does Denise control this line? Or
Well, we wanted to-
Or spend this line?
Break it out as.
Yeah, but I thought we had
You didn't
agreed
want it in there?
to break it out as a 50th anniversary committee
Right,
budget
but
line.
I
That's
thought-
why it's where it
Right, but I
is.
thought, should it be in marketing? Does Denise have responsibility for her budget, for the marketing budget? If she does, and if she's gonna spend that money, that line item,
Well, she really works with the committee on all that
okay?
stuff, so,
I'm just,
the 50th anniversary.
it should be
committee.
wherever it's gonna,
I do-
whoever has the
That's
I
why-
defer to my
Separate.
accountant for that one.
Whoever has the authority to.
Tell me where it shows up in the
spend
book, that's all.
it.
As long as the number's there.
It has come back through me, basically.
Let me ask Art, did we set up a separate, account for writing checks and stuff out of that, Art? How's that being handled?
Not a separate checking account, no, but we account for it separately on this line, 694.
Right,
That's where it goes.
okay.
Okay. Well, in any event, we're in the black on this one. Yeah.
One quick question on taxes. We were running $52,000 a year. We jumped to 64. It looks like we're gonna be around 68 this year, even though we had budgeted for 52. And of course, we're budgeting at the higher number going forward. But is there a reason why we've seen a 30 or 35% jump in taxes in a very short, in a year, basically?
Personal
Is
property.
that personal property?
That's the big one, yeah.
So it's the increase by the
So the
county in
capital-
personal property taxes?
The more assets and things that you purchase, the more.
Okay, so it's basically just a pass-through on the personal, okay, that's all I needed to know. I'm good. It is what it is.
Right.
All right, any other discussion on the general admin budget?
I had noted in my book, with a question mark next to deductible buyback, that was a question, JB, to follow up for an answer. I don't remember exactly what the question was.
I do have the same question mark.
Okay.
I don't know what it
Under
was.
insurance,
I can't tell you for sure, but I think we had a situation where we're able to pay extra money, but it then buys back the large deductible. It reduces the large deductible.
Yeah, I think it was associated with the yacht club and the beach club.
Yeah, it's the wind deductible.
Yeah.
So hurricane sort of thing. So it's cheaper to buy back that than it is to.
To get separate or additional coverages on it, so I think that was part of her
Or get
presentation.
hit with the whole thing. It was probably part of her presentation.
Yeah.
I wasn't there.
Yeah, it was a
Sure it was.
buyback on I'll also question some people in my office as to what that
Yeah,
exactly
my
is.
notes that I took when we were here for their BNF meetings on insurance used current on regular, plus or minus 10% on health insurance. Is that where that fell?
No, this is on
No,
property
this is,
coverage.
this is, yeah. And what, yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but what you're saying makes sense, I mean, Yeah.
It's a way to be able to get the
Right, to get back to
appropriate
it, yeah.
coverages
Mhm.
without having to buy separate policies for it, so you kind of buy it. But I'll double check that myself with somebody.
The only other question I have on the admin is really related to the software, 400K expenditure. I mean, some of us come from the IT industry. I know Doug has lived there all his life, and so have I. If this is not being done, then I would like to propose that this be done. I would like to see a cost-benefit analysis of basically software acquisition versus outsourcing back office applications. We know corporate world, government is going to the cloud services. And the only way we'll know what's the right decision is if we do, total cost of ownership. 5-year projection out, what it's gonna cost to acquire software, what it's gonna cost to maintain it. Those are operating recurring costs. So software, support and maintenance and upgrades versus if we do outsourcing and we have a flat monthly fee that includes everything. I think only that way we'll know for sure from a financial point of view what is a better long-term decision for us. So just to go the path of direct acquisition of software and not look at outsourcing the back office apps it's really, I would have a hard time voting in favor of something like that. Not because I think it's wrong, but just because I don't think we have the necessary financial information.
I agree with you that we need to know the pluses and minuses. My question, real quick, without getting long-term on this, because I think there's a committee that needs to address this as part of their presentation, but one of the problems we have here is that we've got like 25 different locations that interact within the system. So in here, you're charging here, you've got Beach Club, you've got all these, and you've got people who, when they walk in, they want to see somebody that can handle their thing, get it up on the, do it. What backroom operations are we talking about that we're in a position to truly outsource without it becoming even more of a mess trying to marry the two? So, because there's the personnel part of customer service that so I do think we need to look at it. That was my question, though.
You're
Yeah,
getting
so-
into the integration areas. I'm sorry, Oracle acquired Micros, for example. But whether you're looking at point of sales, multiple locations, you're looking at back office, HR, accounting, and other. I think that's all going to be sorted out when you have basically an architecture design, so you know what's the operational software, the business back office applications, and what are the integration points.
I think we should look at it.
That's a
I'm
different
just-
conversation
All right,
altogether.
Before we go down in a rabbit hole, and I agree, I think one of the other things, obviously, this is a sweet spot for me. There's two things. Number one, if we go the route of outsourcing, it may affect the funding, meaning we can't
Right.
take it out of replacement reserve. So that's a big consideration. Number two, the idea of outsourcing presupposes that everything operationally can be integrated.
Right.
And we're not there yet. We are far from there, okay? We're talking, right now, the focus has been, by design, on the accounting, the financial system, okay? But you have so many other ancillary systems that have to be tied into it. We know that there is not a software platform out there that will address everything. So you're gonna be living with integration no matter what, all right? And how you address the integration, both from a support perspective, and a long-term operational perspective, from a funding source, also has to tie into that too. So you're right conceptually, and I think just more discussion is involved in it.
Yeah.
We'll go down into a rabbit hole.
No, I agree,
It's
and
like
that's why I'm just
100
promoting the
different
thought process here, because we're not the only HOA in the country. And, we need to look at the best practices, what
Well-
other HOA is doing. Everybody
Yeah.
has those integration pains.
Yeah, and that's, the TWG has done some background work on that as well.
Okay, great.
All right, so other,
But in addition to that, I mean, we have outsourced with BK, which is one of the dilemmas that we find ourselves in, and that it's more expensive. And what you're talking about is great for the future. It's not something that could impact this budget. I mean, that's a long-term kind of thing, taking into consideration what Doug's saying, but when you talk about outsourcing, I mean, we're living with some outsourcing right now, and it's not
No,
favorable.
well, yeah, but
for us.
Cheryl, BDK is a wrong example to use. BDK is a proprietary platform. I'm talking about COTS applications here, you know, commercial off-the-shelf.
But what you're talking about is a long-term examination to have a true comparison between, can we do that in-house versus outsourcing the whole thing? And as Doug says, we're a long way away from
Yeah,
that.
I think we do have to address, I mean, unfortunately, we may have to address a short-term issue, because there's a real need there, and I think, see Steve nod his head, there's certainly opportunity for improvement in the accounting software that we're currently using. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely.
All right, you can
definitely
stop right there.
Definitely improvements that can be done.
I can stop right there. All right, other questions, comments, recommendations on the general admin budget? All right, all right. So
Next
we're
section.
through that one. All right, next section.
Yacht Club.
No.
We're going in alphabetical order?
I'm taking it right out of,
I just wanna
Right
throw
out
a
of
sense
the
of
book.
humor here.
right out of the book. All right, that way there's no favoritism here. All right.
Look at that.
We're,
All right.
all right. General Manager's office. All right, discussion.
Contract, well, I don't know if anybody has any, expenses are lower than they were in payroll, you know, than they were in 2015, so, and so I think that's a good setup there. But my question is, contract services jumped by, you know, say 10 grand. Is that is
HR consultant.
HR.
That's the
That's
HR.
HR
HR
consultant.
consultant?
Yeah.
Okay, so good, I'm good there, okay.
While we're on the subject of HR consultant, I would like to suggest that we bump this budget up. Just looking at the issues that we have with the HR, with the human resources, you know, the things that we have collectively discussed, job classifications, performance review, metrics in place, job descriptions, internal audit, looking at the other HR policies, overtime. Are we enforcing overtime, written approvals, et cetera? I just think there's so much work, house cleaning work that could be done with the HR that I feel this is
Right.
lowball.
What you're excuse me, what you were just describing is the stuff that we're looking to accomplish between now, or maybe not get all of it done before May 1, but that's what's gonna be going on over these next few months. That 13 is to continue on after that.
Okay.
So
So you're saying the bulk of that is
Just
gonna
more
happen in
the
now?
bulk of what you were talking about, the job descriptions and all those types of metrics,
Or the-
that's what we're looking to
very near
get done
future, yeah.
in this near term.
I do believe, I'd like to just have a little bit of leeway in
Yeah.
there, so in case you end up saying, hey, I've gotta go back out and get something, you know,
Okay.
2 or 3 grand doesn't kill us and provides us especially if the board comes back and says, hey, we wanna see, and you're saying, geez, you know, we put 13 in, I got it all done, and these idiots are asking me for
I
more
mean,
stuff.
what's the 13K get us? How
yeah,
many
yeah,
hours
that's
at what
what-
rate?
yeah.
I mean, is it 1
Right.
hour at
Right.
$13,000 an hour, or is
What are
it,
we
you know, I
talking,
mean,
not your rate, Doug, this is other people's rate.
my rate?
I mean, if you're doing $50 an hour, you're looking at less than 300 hours, basically. That's, it's not.
Yeah, 260 plus hours.
260
260
hours.
hours.
So, I mean, that number, I'd like to think, was arrived at after some thought, right? I mean, it's just not a dart in the wall, 260, that's our number. So, while I agree, maybe we're not talking about a whole lot, maybe we bump it up to 15 and just kinda,
That's 20
You know,
hours a month.
you know,
I would do 20K, just to have cushion, because I truly believe, we are too large of an organization not to have a more steady HR support. And depending upon the outcome of the work you're doing, we gotta make sure we're compliant with the current state and federal laws. We obviously have some issues in terms of benefits for certain class of employees. All this has to be vetted out and reviewed and make
Well,
sure.
we-
you know,
Right.
And
What Pat was saying, it was about 20 hours a month.
What happens with the law?
In addition,
Yeah.
and that's beyond what you were just talking about, slow it on. Once we do all that, then are we looking at 20 hours a month to deal with things as they come up? or other things that we want them to do. If we wanna go a little bit more than that, I think that's okay, but I don't think we need a
Okay.
huge amount more.
Right, and I just want, it depends, I don't know who we're looking to, or what, is it a firm, is it a person? A lot of the things that Slobodan, that you're talking about, we'd have to go to an attorney anyway.
Yeah,
You're not gonna hire an HR person that's gonna answer those questions with any absolute, I don't think. That's
Yeah,
been my
and-
experience with HR departments.
Yeah.
I still was on the phone with an, you know,
Well,
an
let's-
attorney
Right,
over
well-
those big
Let's look at it
areas,
slightly
so-
different, because I think you're making a good point. So the question becomes is, so you got, the way I look at it, you got two choices. You can either add to the attorney so that you've got some slough in there, or you can say, hey, we're gonna have to, when we say HR, that is not necessarily talking about a single person, because we're not
It could
hiring
be both.
anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So do we need to kick that up so that if we do need to get an attorney to look at HR issues or to review something, we've got them? I think that's really kind of where you're getting at.
Exactly.
Is just so that there's a little cushion in there.
Exactly, and I'd rather have that additional budget be under HR so people can see that we're allocating proper HR budget for support as opposed to building up the legal,
And everybody
budget, which
wonders
is
what are
already
we-
high.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
agree. I agree in concept, but I think we have to understand that no matter what you put in HR, you're gonna have to get to a point where legal gets involved.
Exactly.
Okay, so we
It
can't
just-
put, you're not gonna say, oh, I'm gonna save all this in
Right.
legal because I'm putting all this on the
No,
HR side. That's
no.
not gonna happen. But I think, I would go along with, let's give ourselves a little bit of a cushion,
Right.
because we do have an unknown. I'd like to think, and I'm always somewhat of an optimist, is that, with this, we knew, we're talking about job classifications, slowing on, and, salary ranges, job descriptions, all that administrative stuff. I believe JB was sort of saying, hey, we can get that done in the short term, okay? And then, once we get that environment stabilized, now you've got sort of a longer term, which would be a HR person for generalized situations that come up in a very traditional HR environment, and then when it hits that legal side, we certainly will incur legal, and we've already got that in place. So, I just think that I'd go along with bumping it up a little bit, but not too much.
I don't
If
because
you took it to
Too
30
much.
hours a month, it takes it to 18.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't think you need
And
too much, because you're gonna get
Yeah,
back
and I'd
to
be
the
good with
attorney.
that, 30
Okay.
hours a month.
30 hours?
Yeah, I just think, like things that
I
we
mean,
haven't
that's,
done, like a career.
some,
Plus or
development.
some
minus.
months are gonna be 10, and
Yeah.
other months maybe
Right.
8.
All months will be zeros.
AB, that's it. I like that. All because of your wonderful management capabilities, all months will be 0. I like that.
I like
That's a
that.
goal.
So
Right.
13, which is the piece of HR, goes to
18,
18.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
Contract
that's
services.
5 more, that goes up to 22.
20 feet there.
I have another one. I have a question. Does the payroll, and this, I guess I'm allowed to say this, and if I'm not, you can chastise me. Contractually, with JB, does this?
No, it doesn't cover it.
Okay, I was gonna say, contractually, there's an increase, all right? And does the payroll cover that?
So that's not included, okay?
Put it in.
So that needs to be
I think that
adjusted.
needs to be,
Yeah.
That definitely
Absolutely.
needs to be adjusted, all right? Because that's contractually what we agreed to
Right.
over the 3-year
Yeah.
contract.
And that kicks in September,
And it
the
kick-
anniversary.
you
Yeah,
get-
we
it
need
in.
to be.
So do you prorate it from September
Yeah,
on?
whatever.
So you gotta come up
Right.
with the prorated number, all right, that needs to be
$1
added to the
million.
payroll.
He will handle that.
Now-
Okay.
Yeah. Now, why do you have some IT services in here? And
Man, I wanted
under
to ask that
general
one.
manager? You like-
No, I wanted to
The
ask
IT
that.
manager, I think, is there. Is it-
No,
No, I
think
because that
the
would
IT
be under
manager's
payroll,
fine,
if you're
yeah.
paying them.
Oh, it's
you-
under,
Under contract services.
Yeah, it
I
just
just
says,
wonder why you
it just
wouldn't
says
have all the
IT
IT
services.
in that one location, what this is.
yeah, usually.
I'm drawing a blank, Art.
3.3.
Well, yeah, under the previous system, DDK, they actually gave us detailed billing as to what departments they were working in and what they were working on in those departments, and we were actually charging that to the departments. I would like to get, or I would think we would like to get to some degree of that with our in-house as to, we're not just doing networking, they may be fixing somebody's printer, or, it could be 100 things.
Yeah.
So we still kept it in here.
So that was just a division of all the other IT stuff?
Yeah, just additional services for departments themselves. instead of the whole place.
So
And
each
is it in
department.
other departments too?
Yeah.
Is it in other departments too?
Sure.
Yeah?
Okay.
So we got a lot more
So-
IT money in here than I
So-
think it should all be in.
I was gonna
On
just offer a
spot.
suggestion that, you know, in the real world, you know, you might wanna consider, IT is an organization-wide resource, all right? It's not departmental specific, and a way to track support costs would be across the entire organization, because exactly the kind of thing that Art said, you know, because it could also give you sort of this, sort of skewed number, you know, well, if you started looking at it and doing an analysis, say, well, you know, the finance department, you know, took 48% of the support dollars, you know, well, that's because by design,
because
they need to,
that's what they
okay?
do,
So you
right.
look at it across the entire organization rather than sub-optimizing it to a departmental level. I mean, just a suggestion, it's a better way to track that, because if you're looking at support contracts going forward, you know, you don't have to find such a specific individual. I only need somebody, you know, off the street that can deal with the finance. No, you want somebody that does it entire, and especially if we get to a, you know, a more fully integrated software environment, you know, you're gonna be able to find that skill set, whether in the form of staff or whether in the form of third-party support. So I just offer for consideration that you take all of your IT costs and put it at the org level, not at the department level. Just-
Well, what's Steve's feeling about that?
I said it's a recommendation, not a mandate.
Well,
so I
I'm
just
just
yeah.
saying.
And so, Steve, you're,
Does he have a comment on that?
please.
No, I have no issues with that. I don't see why. Yeah. We can put it in general admin.
Yeah, just something to think about, I mean, you know. All right, other on the, so you got the dollar amounts on the payroll, and then we know what the thing.
Contract services were increasing.
All right, and then Slovan, will give you a shout out, here's more postage, so let's,
Yeah, you'll
let's
see
keep-
when we get to
yeah.
the marketing and, the costs are, are gonna be very, very obvious.
So, one of the other things, and I brought this up in the original budget meetings with the Budget Finance Committee, I see telephone, and I look at it across the entire organization, I did a quick calculation, I believe we're spending upwards of $85,000 for telephone across the departments. You know, that's another one that you might, and I'm just throwing it out there, you might want to look at some sort of centralization, whether it's in the form of a different carrier, whether it's in the form of different plans, whether it's in the form of, you know, I give cell phones to people versus a policy of not providing OPA cell phones to people. Just another area to take a look at. Again, that's one of the ones that I had goes across an organizational line in my thing, but no action at this point, but after we have this discussion, we may want to consolidate all this cost and really take a look at how much it costs the organization in total.
And that's
As long
kind-
as we do a breakdown, same with the IT, because the IT department should be able to provide per department internal costs to see who is using the IT more than others. To use your example of the telephone costs, unless you're able to drill down, and for instance, I was looking at that because the yacht club almost doubled in telephone charges from 3 years ago to where it is today. So unless you're able to have that department-specific line item, you're not gonna be able to see where the spikes are and figure out, troubleshoot the problem. I think there are 2 or 3 departments that actually had phone bills doubled.
Yeah.
It becomes as having subgroups within
Right.
Yeah.
a
You can
line
account, yeah.
item. But the thing that helps the board and helps everybody looking at it is if you see that line item that, hey, here's what insurance cost us, here's what, telephones cost us, here's what this cost us,
We
Yeah,
got that
we
this
do,
year.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think
Yeah.
that's the thing, as long as we're subgrouped down, that
Yeah.
allows
Yeah.
JB and Steve to kind of look and say, hey, geez, we're spending a boatload of money here. But if you look at it at all the little pieces, it doesn't look that bad as you walk along the
And
street.
it gets buried, because a lot of people look at the bottom like, oh, well, we're in the black, and they're not looking at, a 27% increase in phone calls, I mean, because, as I'm sure we all know, economies of scale, right? You pull everybody together, what can I get now that I know this is gonna be the usage across the organization? Do I move into a different band for discounting and things like that? Can I go to a vendor and, try to negotiate something, so.
But the phone is actually budgeted less than the actual of 3 years ago, so.
Fewer
I don't think
international phone
anything-
calls, I guess, huh?
I don't think anything's gone crazy there, at least in the last 4 years.
Yeah, and I get,
Anyway,
I,
I'm just
yeah,
saying,
no,
I'm
that's,
just
that's a
saying,
good
yeah.
point, Pat. The way I look at it is
Not that we
that
can't say,
cost?
not that it wasn't too high
kind of-
4 years ago.
Yeah,
but-
is that cost
right,
in line with an organization of this size
Right.
and these business requirements?
Right.
That's all,
Yeah,
just,
that's a good point, good question.
all right, anything else on the general manager's office? Any other questions? Okay. Next tab in the book, finance. Finance and Membership Department.
This is the one where I would like to ask if, I think JB gave us a little bit of an explanation, or maybe I overheard it when he had a town hall meeting. But I see, and I know that he's merged membership and finance together, so there is an incremental,
Right.
payroll and all other costs as a result of that integration. But even if I combine the membership budget and the finance from previous year, I see a spike in payroll that's about 20%, even with the two combined compared to last year. So I'm just trying to figure out what is actually causing that.
Yeah, so if you look at the next page, it actually shows an 11% decrease.
I think I might have gone to 2016 or 2015 when I was looking at finance and membership.
Okay.
Also, spike in the overtime.
Yeah, if you went from 15
Right.
Right,
and 16 at 430 plus.
right, and I combined the membership and the finance to
Right.
come up with the aggregate value and then compare that against this year's budget, so.
Yeah,
Well, we have an IT manager that we never had before.
So that was moved from GM to,
We never had one.
I didn't have one.
but we did budget for it. It was 65K that was budgeted. Yeah.
Oh, you're talking budget or are you talking actual?
I'm talking about budget. I actually
You're talking-
compared the budget from 2016